All right, we're going to get started with our program.
My name is Deirdre Sizemore-Mixon, and I am the Interim Dean of Library Services here at Minnesota State University Mankato. And on behalf of Library Services and the Sesquicentennial Steering Committee, I'd like to welcome you to today's program. We have Dr. William E. Lass, and he's going to be talking about the history of the university based on the research he did for his newly published book, Minnesota State University Mankato, 1868 to 2018, A Sesquicentennial History. This is one of many sesquicentennial events this week and the second of the day. There are opportunities every day to learn more about the university and its history. We hope you'll join us for more of them. Information is available on the 150th website and around campus. You'll see posters as well. As part of the Sesquicentennial, we take this opportunity to recognize that we live, work, and learn in the homeland of the Dakota people, whose language frames our name, Minnesota State University Mankato. I would now like to introduce our speaker, Dr. William E. Lass. Dr. Lass is an emeritus professor of history at Minnesota State University Mankato. His long university career, 1960 to 2002, he taught courses in Minnesota and U.S. history, worked on many campus committees, served as history department chairman, and was the founding director of the Southern Minnesota Historical Center and University Archives. He has written 40 journal articles, 237 book chapters, dictionary entries, and book reviews. It's a darn impressive number. And this Sesquicentennial history is his 11th book. I've had the pleasure of knowing Dr. Lass since he served on the search committee that hired me as university archivist. I've really enjoyed the opportunity to work closely with him on this book, and I'm really looking forward to today's presentation.
So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Lass.
Okay, is the sound system okay? Very good. I'm going to hang close to the podium. I have a somewhat gimpy right leg. Went to Walmart last week trying to buy a new one. Unfortunately, they told me they were all my size, so I have to go with what I have. Before I get into the subject itself, I want to say just a word about the meaning of 150 years, if there is a way of defining it. So I'll try to relate it in human terms. I started teaching at what was then Mankato State College in the fall of 1960. And one of the first people I met in Mankato was a recently retired sociology professor, Gustav Peterson, who was then part-time curator of the Blue Earth County Historical Society. I talked with Mr. Peterson, 40, 50 times, got to know his family real well. And what I found is he retired in 1957. He started in 1913. So he had 8 years in normal school and then the rest in the teacher's college. And it so happened that the year he was hired, 1913, a geography instructor named Francis Swan retired after 40 years of service to the school. Francis Swan was the first 40-year person in the history of the school. So she started the 5th year of the institution. And I look at that and I think, well, the combination of Lass, Peterson, and Swan pretty much covers 150 years. So this should tell you something about how long or how short 150 years is. Now I can also tell you that however old you are today, as you age, you're probably going to have a changing perspective on 150 years. And somehow, the more distant it gets, the closer it will seem to you. You can get some insight into that by talking to your grandparents sometime. Now, what I intend to do today is to highlight certain phases of the school's development. And literally what I'm going to do is sort of, if I could draw an analogy to the sea, I'm going to sort of hit the wave tops. And I hope going that way, I will avoid diving deep, staying down long, coming up dry. As to the institution, there have been 4 distinct organizational periods. The first was the normal school, which lasted from 1868 to 1921. It was followed by the Teachers College phase, 1921 to 1957. Then the State College phase, 1957 to 1975, and then the university phase, 1975 to the present. So as of now, the longest period in the history of the school has been the normal school. Now, with respect to the normal school, there's a reason it's called normal school. It was not a college, and I would emphasize that. It was not a college. So this story that has been circulating around campus for years about how Julius Sears was the first president of an institution of higher learning in the United States, it's not quite Robin Hood history, but pretty darn close. The normal school was not a college in the sense that there was no level below it from which one had to graduate in order to qualify for the normal school. In 1868, there were no more than half a dozen high schools in Minnesota. High schools were basically not there as institutions. So admission to the normal school was, first of all, there was an age requirement. A person had to be at least 15 years old. And that was pretty much it. If you're 15, you can qualify to go to the normal school. Entering students were given an exam, but the exam was solely for the purpose of determining where to place them in the class. It was not for the purpose of rejecting them. The third principal of the school, the Reverend David Clark John, tended to be a bit of a crank, and among other things, he complained that he couldn't turn anyone down unless they were absolutely imbecilic. And I think this is pretty close to the truth. So they were admitting people. They didn't have the term functional illiterate in their vocabulary, but that's what they were talking about. They had people who entered the normal school who basically were not prepared for anything. And for that matter, may have gone only through about the 3rd or 4th grade. Now, as to the normal schools, at a time of a sesquicentennial, there is obviously a tendency for every institution to make itself appear unique. And every institution like this one is, to a degree, somewhat unique. But you never want to overdo uniqueness to the point where you become parochial. These changes in Mankato State were all part of a system. So the normal school at Mankato became a teacher's college. Well, so did the normal school at St. Cloud, Winona, same year. So these are system changes. Normal schools in Minnesota, the first one was Winona, started in 1860. And for years and years and years, Winona was always referred to as the first normal school. Mankato is the second normal school, St. Cloud the third, Moorhead was the fourth, Duluth was the fifth, and lastly, Bemidji was the sixth. The normal school idea originated in Europe, brought to the United States in the 1830s, in Massachusetts specifically, And the American normal schools were generally modeled after Prussian normal schools. The Prussians were viewed to be masters at child psychology, and the normal school was predicated, first of all, with the normal schools. Do not interpret normal to mean average or ordinary. The word was derived from one of the Latin meanings of norma, and so literally it translates as rule or rigid structure. And the normal school had just that. Its nature was very carefully prescribed. And with the normal schools, there had to be three components. The faculty had to teach subject matter, the premise being that you had to know what to teach before you could teach. The second thing is, once you covered the subject matter, then you had to deal with teaching methodology. And this may seem like a so what, but if your teaching methodology is to kindergarten or first grade people, there's a lot of child psychology that better go into that. For that matter, there's a fair amount of child psychology for college students. But be that as it may, thirdly, a normal school always had a so-called model department. Now, this word model evolved into practice school, which in turn evolved into campus school. So as you train teachers off here on the side, in the same building, in fact, maybe in the next room, you're operating an elementary school, and that's where the teachers practice. They're simply in the building, and the students for the model school came from the community. So in Mankato's case, some Mankato parents saw an advantage in sending their children to the normal schools, elementary school. Now, model schools in time added a junior high component. This was not done in Mankato until the 1930s. And lastly, they added a high school component. So by the time Mankato State's campus school closed in 1976, it was operating a high school. Now, as to the evolution of the model schools, in the 1870s, probably about a third of the students were men, about two-thirds women. By World War I, after World War I started in April of 1917, if you go to the next fall, 1917-18, there was one male student in a student body of about 700. So that tells you something about the amount of men. Now, when you get to the question of where did the males go, the first generation of the normal school coincided with the Industrial Revolution. So as you get this rapid mechanization and the concurrent movement of people to cities, men found that they could make more money if they went to Minneapolis and worked in a flour mill, or for that matter, if they worked as stevedores in Minneapolis, they could make more. And so the men vacate the profession, and by default, it's left to young women. Now, these young women typically went out when they were 18, 19, 20 years old. Many of them married, usually local farmers. And so as a result, there were always hundreds of vacancies in elementary schools, which is what the normal schools were geared for. What happened over time is that high schools became more common. The great breakthrough in Minnesota was 1878, when the president of the University of Minnesota, the William Watts Falwell, who later became a well-known historian, was absolutely distressed that the University of Minnesota had to offer remedial work to many of the students he came in. He said the university shouldn't have to do this. If there's remedial work to be done, somebody should come out of high school knowing how to write. They should know how to speak. They should know how to do elementary arithmetic. So Falwell persuaded the legislature to start offering state aid to high schools. This was the great breakthrough. Once communities qualified for state aid, then you get the whole phenomenon of the accredited high school. So by about 1895, about half the students at the Mankato Normal were high school graduates. By 1910, all of them were. And so what this did was to say, now our student body is forcing us to look at something beyond a normal school. Well, the beyond the normal school was obviously a teacher's college. I think when I started at Mankato, I was somewhat overwhelmed by the prevailing notion that Minnesota was a progressive, forward-looking state that had a lot of innovation. Actually, it's not nearly as forward-looking historically as people make it out to be. Minnesota was not a pioneer in changing education. It was an imitator. The first normal school to make the transition to a teacher's college was what is now Eastern Michigan University in Ypsilanti. That was 1899. So the model was there. And what happened in the case of Mankato, the normal school board in 1916 made it possible. They passed a rule that only high school graduates could enter Mankato and or Winona. Those two schools were singled out. And so for the first time, high school graduation was required. Well, almost immediately, Mankato and Winona became sort of de facto junior colleges. And the University of Minnesota recognized this. They said, fine, you get a 2-year diploma from Mankato State, we'll admit you as juniors. This was the great breakthrough. And it's this that made Mankato, under President Charles Cooper, very anxious to become a teacher's college. The greatest resistance to that came from the University of Minnesota, that quite frankly notified them, you aren't qualified to be a college. If you become a college, it will cheapen the bachelor's degree. So they licked their wounds, bided their time. Then in 1921, in large part because of the impact of World War I, Minnesota was short almost 1,000 teachers. Now, somehow the legislature reached a conclusion that I can't reach. But the legislature thought they'd solve this teacher shortage by making all of the 6 normal schools teachers' colleges. Now, like I say, I have a gap somewhere that doesn't enable me to make that jump. But the important thing is they believed it would solve the teachers' college shortage. And so, by law, they made 6 normal schools teachers' colleges, which leaves the impression that there were lines of people standing at the doors wanting to attend a teacher's college. That's the impression I had before I got into the research. It's completely false. The Mankato offered its first 4-year degree, its first 4-year graduate was 1927, 6 years after it became a teacher's college. And that was one person. The next year they had none. The next year they had 2. So most of the students through the 1930s were still taking essentially the old normal school courses. And it isn't until about 1940 that the number of degree earners reached the number of diploma earners. Now, how far that diploma program went, it wasn't finally ended until 1960, when the last of the preparation of teachers for elementary schools ended. And by 1960, rural elementary schools were sort of in the category of hen's teeth or dinosaurs. They were pretty darn rare. So in the case of the Teachers College, the highlights of the Teachers College at Mankato is that after just a few years, by 1925, some of the people in the Teachers College system said, we want to go a step beyond. We want to become state colleges. And what they meant by state colleges was an institution that would offer degrees in something other than education. Now, the people who were the strongest advocates of that idea were from Duluth and the Duluth area. And those of you conversant with Minnesota history know pretty well how loud the Iron Rangers can complain. They were coalesced. They represented an iron mining profession. They had political lobbying down to an art. And so through the 1930s, Duluth was the catalyst in recommending the change. And this carried on until 1947, when largely because of State Senator Val Hill from Mankato, there was a concerted move to make all the state teachers' colleges state colleges so they could offer programs other than education. The legislature didn't even get in a decent hearing. It didn't get out of committee. However, the legislature did decide to oil the squeakiest wheel, which was Duluth. So they singled Duluth out, made it a branch of the University of Minnesota, and so Duluth was taken out of the system. For what it's worth, the University of Minnesota did not ask for this. In fact, lobbied against it. They didn't want Duluth, but they got Duluth because it was take Duluth or we'll do some terrible thing to your appropriation for the next 2 years. So the university sort of blackmailed into it. Now, it turned out well for Duluth. Interestingly enough, it suggested sort of a model as to what might happen to the 5 remaining schools. So as late as the 1960s, there was some sentiment that Mankato State become a branch of the University of Minnesota. Again, the university didn't want it. Mankato State definitely didn't want it. Now, during this teachers' college phase, some significant things happened. And one of the things that happened is that Frank McElroy, and despite what the students who live in those dormitories say, the name is pronounced McElroy, not McElroy. I knew maybe 20 people who knew him, and they always said he always pronounced it like the Scotchman he was. It was McElroy. McElroy desperately wanted accreditation from the North Central Accrediting Association. And so he did some research on what North Central wanted, and he was quite open about it. Asked the Accrediting Association, what will it take for me to persuade this legislature to make it possible for you to accredit me? And they said, fine, you have to involve the faculty more in school governance. You have to see that there's faculty tenure. You have to see that there's faculty rank. You have to see that there's a retirement system. And all of this fell in place within about a 5-year period, 1938 to 1943. So the threat of accreditation is really what made the Teachers College more of a college. Now, as far as the state college phase goes, the state college phase that started in 1957, it's rather interesting that Val Ebb was still around in 1957. He spent 30 years in the legislature. There's good reason why there's a street named after him. He was the greatest friend Mankato State ever had. And I know for a fact that when the library was first built, 1967, 1968, Val Ebb happened to be at the time chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. He refused to consider an appropriations bill for the University of Minnesota until they threw in a library for Mankato State. And after I found that out, I said, well, you know, maybe this idea of term limits isn't so sure after all. There is something to the idea of having seniority. Val Ebb reached the point where by 1966, there were some people saying he was senile. I didn't care. I knew him personally, one of the nicest people you could ever hope to meet. I didn't care if he had a touch of senility or not. He had tenure, or he had seniority, and he knew how to use it. But in any event, when M brought up the transition to state college in 1957, there was virtually no opposition in the legislature. And the reason for it being is that what had happened from 1947 to 1957, in the case of Mankato, they started a division of business. So they're starting offering something that's completely apart. They started a division of nursing. So those two things were clearly distinct from teaching. And also they started a graduate program, an MS program in 1953. So they could make a case by 1957 that they legitimately were something more than a teacher's college. When you move to the teacher's college phase, 57 to 75, it's the shortest period in the institution's history. But in that 18 years, it's rather interesting that the teacher's college was only 3 years old when you started getting agitation for university status. Now, not many people know about this, and I devote a fair amount of space to it in the book. The original notion for university status at Mankato was for a University of Southern Minnesota that would have its own regents, would have its own governing board, have its own legislative appropriation, and would be withdrawn from the system. So it would be separate from St. Cloud, Winona, what have you. Now, of course, as you would expect, the University of Minnesota resisted this. But most of the resistance came from within the system. St. Cloud, obviously, was not happy. Moorhead was not happy. The idea of a school withdrawing, and I can tell you very quickly one immediate effect. The campus at Mankato State became famed after 1966 for the famous Gage Towers, the twin tower dormitories. At the time the two buildings in Gage Towers were erected, the governing board, the State College Board, had actually authorized a second pair of towers, and they were to be funded out of bonds issued by the college board. And the problem with the bonds is that, of course, the board, it's a debt, essentially, that you pay off over time. And the board got alarmed at separate university status for Mankato because it would have funded 2 more skyscraper dormitories that would be in an institution that it had no control over. So they said, guess what, we're withdrawing our support. And the second set of doors was never built because there would have been no feasible way of financing them. Now, this opposition within the system is what killed the University of Southern Minnesota. At the time, Clarence Crawford was running sort of a shell game. Officially, he pretended that the University of Southern Minnesota was a community effort, that he had nothing to do with it. Actually, I've seen the correspondence between Crawford and Val M. Crawford was in it up to his proverbial eyeballs. He wasn't fooling anybody. When the University of Southern Minnesota failed in 1965, Crawford resigned, ostensibly because if he moved to Florida as a teacher, he'd have a better retirement system and he'd have a better salary. I went into this thinking that I still think that Crawford by 1965 was about as popular as a bootlegger in a nunnery. He used up what good capital he had. And I had that notion. Problem is I couldn't find the evidence for it. And whoever was behind it was wise enough not to leave any records. So I didn't put it in the book because it's not something I can prove. Now, the idea of university was extended into the Nickerson presidency, 1966 to 74, and ultimately university status was achieved in 1975 when Mankato and the other 6 institutions, Southwest State was added to the system in 1967. Metropolitan State was added in 1972. So Southwest was a college for 8 years before it became a university. Metro was a college for 3 years before it became a university. In 1975, if you looked for the institutions that actually were universities in type rather than just name, the only 2 that would have qualified would have been Mankato and St. Cloud. And the original notion was to go to the legislature and ask for university status for Mankato and St. Cloud. And it didn't work for this reason. The other schools that were left out were obviously not happy. And strange as it would seem, the greatest catalyst for university status happened to be Winona. And in Winona's case, it was still a college when the Wisconsin colleges across the river were made universities. That was quickly followed by tuition reciprocity. So you had a situation where there were state universities in Wisconsin, Minnesota students using tuition reciprocity could cross the Mississippi River and get a degree from a university. Now, whether it is true or not that a university degree meant a better, quicker job placement than a college degree, I'm not qualified to say. Personally, I doubt it. But nonetheless, students believed it. More importantly, their parents believed it. And so you had this strong lobbying effort to make everyone, every school in the system, a university. So when the bill came up in 1975 in the legislature, the Mankato Free Press was absolutely livid well, Mankato deserves to be a university, but Winona doesn't, and Moorhead doesn't, and on and on. But it had to be a system change in order to get it through the legislature. There was a lot of horse trading, and in a way, that's what politics is all about. Now, shortly after university status, the campuses were consolidated. Campus consolidation is another whole story. In the Valley campus, as it was called officially, quite often called the lower campus, or for that matter, the old campus, by 1957 had outgrown its space. And it so happened in 1957 that Crawford, and for that matter, Mankato businessmen, wanted to expand the physical education facilities on the lower campus. They wanted to take the 1939 field house and add a swimming pool to it. And this would have included state funds, it would have included a considerable effort, and it would have included building enlargement. The only way to enlarge the building was to scale down a steep hill to its rear, which would have cost thousands and thousands of dollars. Now, I went into this thinking the campus lore during Crawford's administration always was that Clarence Crawford was the pioneer for the Highland campus. I found out that it was not true. Clarence Crawford was allied with downtown businessmen who wanted to keep the campus very close to downtown. Now, this is before people had the clever idea of erecting a mall out on the prairie and somewhat ridiculously naming it River Hills, but that's another whole story. In any event, Crawford and the businessmen held a meeting with the State Department of Administration, and what they proposed to do was to add some 26 acres to the Valley campus by scaling down the bluffs on both sides of Glenwood Avenue. So you'd erect this huge dam-like flatland and then building a culvert on it so people could go under Glenwood Ravine. It's sort of mind-boggling. It's almost Panama Canal type dimensions. In what was a very stormy meeting, the State Commissioner of Administration, Arthur Naftalin, said, in essence, you're crazy. You're going to spend millions of dollars scaling down these hills, and all you're going to add is 26 acres. What you should really do is go outside the city limits, buy yourself some agricultural land, which we can pick up for $1,000 an acre, and build your campus there. And so it's the state, really, that forced Mankato State into moving to the Highland campus. Now, as for the Highland campus, the first buildings were two wings of Crawford and what was then called the Wilson Campus School. This would have been 1959. As late as 1973, Mankato State's progress was predicated on two campuses, operating two campuses, a Highland campus and a Valley campus. What did that in was part of the Arab oil embargo, where the price of oil shot up very quickly, and it was quite costly to operate the inter-campus bus service. That oil embargo was accompanied by a precipitous post-Vietnam enrollment drop, a drop from about 12,000 students to about 9,000 in the space of 2 years. Believe me, that caused a lot of economic agony. And it also left used for other reasons. Now, part of it's still there, of course. The old main building remodeled into senior housing. The old library building remodeled into a county building. Vine is in a resident Nichols Hall. The dormitories have been converted into apartment buildings. But it was sold actually at a terrible loss. And when the campus was consolidated in 1979, what was added at that point, the administration building was put in front of the Union Building. So the administration building is stuck between the Union Building and Morse Hall. An annex was added to Morse Hall where the School of Business is. The women's gymnasium, Highland North, was added. And then the Wilson Campus School was phased out and basically made a service building with some classrooms. And that's the way it fit. The irony of that was that in the 1980s, there was a sharp enrollment increase. And so because of that sharp enrollment increase, then they're scrambling for space. Now, I see time is fast fleeing. I'll mention one other thing about buildings. When the administration building was rebuilt after the 1922 fire, President Cooper spoke at the dedication ceremonies of the rebuilt building, and he made the prophecy that the building was so well built that it will stand for at least 1,000 years, like the pyramids of old. Interestingly enough, modern buildings don't come that way. And so if you look at Gage Towers, the most striking feature of our campus architecture, they were torn down in 2013, because of the determination that it was cheaper to tear them down and build dormitories, Sears and Prescott, closer to the university core than it was to remodel them. And so this is sort of the way American building goes. I understand that it's not in the history because there wasn't enough information about it, but now I'm told that Armstrong Hall is soon going to go the way of all flesh. And so the campus picture will change. With respect to the campus picture, let me add this, that anytime you look at history, you're obviously looking at history from the perspective of the present. The present has a strange way of evolving. So probably the next time Mankato State has a really big observance is going to be 2068, the bicentennial of the institution. I'm planning on leaving that to someone else. But by the time that happens, the perspective on history will have changed. The normal school phase will be less important. Possibly the rebuilding of this campus will be more important, but this is inevitable within the nature of history. As historians are fond of saying, the only constant in history is change, and there will almost certainly be change. Darby, once we do, allows some time for questions. So,
All right, well, let's thank Dr. Last.
Might be, there we go, 2 microphones. So if anyone wants to ask questions, we will run those around. Because this is your opportunity, because if you ask it, there's a good chance he has the answer. History of the university. Anything?
So, of all the presidents that you looked at, which one would you say is the academic guy? Which one do you think is the builder guy? Of all those presidents you talked about.
Who was
the
the,
honors for being the academic innovator, the mover, the shaker for the academic part of the university? And likewise, who ends up getting the credit for the most buildings, the physical plant?
well, I think as far as the physical plant is concerned, Crawford, without a doubt, was the champion of building the campus. But in Crawford's case, it's something like Jacksonian democracy. You're not saying Andrew Johnson did all these things personally, but he's associated with them. And the same thing with Crawford. He coincided with the great building surge. In terms of the person who had the greatest vision as to how to organize the university and to project the image of the university, I'd be inclined to say Richard Rush. Rush had a great deal of organizational sense. He's the person who realized that as long as it was called Mankato State University, that there you didn't have to go very far from Mankato. You encountered people who'd say, Mankato what? I had a graduate student who did an internship in the Motorola archives in Schaumburg, Illinois, northwest of Chicago. And none of the people she worked with knew where Mankato was. They'd heard of Minnesota because of its 12-month winters and because of the Vikings or the Twins, but they didn't know Mankato. And Rush was perceptive enough to realize that if you want to project a national, or better yet, international image, rename it to Minnesota State, so that at least Minnesota is recognizable. And I think that's an important breakthrough in terms of image of the school.
Else? President Davenport.
Yeah, we got sound. Dr. Lass, could you talk for a minute? You and I had some great conversations about Julia A. Sears and a lot of misnomers about her tenure here at the university, and then what happened to her when she left and went on.
What was that?
Can you talk about Dr. Julia Sears and what she did after she, a little bit about her time and then after she left MS, the normal?
Okay, the question involved Julia Sears. And I don't mean to slight Julia Sears when I say that she was not the president of a college. And she was not the president, the first president of an institution of higher learning in the United States. Anytime anybody says that, I find myself saying, well, I don't know anything about all the institutions in the United States. And short of surveying them all, I can't prove a statement like that. So I never use it. Now, after leaving Mankato in 1974, Julia Sears had a teaching career of slightly over 3 decades at Peabody Normal in Nashville, Tennessee, now part of Vanderbilt University. And at Peabody, she built up an excellent reputation as a teacher of mathematics. Her students seemed to adore her. The school remembered her very fondly. And also, when she was living in Nashville, she became involved in the suffrage movement. Now, one of the things people who casually look at history do is they'll sometimes get cause and effect inverted, and they sometimes confuse places. And so I've seen statements to the effect that Julia Sears was a fiery suffragette when she lived in Mankato. There's absolutely no evidence of that. She was associated with the suffrage movement when she was in Nashville. So, but this is an 1880s, 1890s thing. And so yes, Julia Sears should be remembered. But as a historian, I think she should be remembered in a correct way. We don't have to create mythology in order to remember her. Now, I think it is safe to say, in fact, I could say positively, that you could make the statement that Julia Sears was the only woman normal school leader in Minnesota. There's no doubt about that. And that in itself is quite a distinction, if you want to look at it. And that's the way I describe her. But above all else, when we make statements in history, when we make factual statements, we have to go where the evidence takes us. And I find absolutely no evidence to support these claims that she was the president of an institution of higher learning. Well, it's beyond president. It's nation's first president of an institution of higher learning. That's an extraordinary, unproven claim. But with all regard to her, I think in many respects she must have been an extraordinary person. The students at what was then the Mankato Normal School certainly associated with her. I think probably some of that was that at the time she was about 10 years older than most of the students, and it's much easier for young students to build up sort of a kinship relationship with young instructors. They might have similar taste in music, or they come out of the same time period, but they can talk to each other in ways that older faculty members can't relate to an 18 or 19-year-old. So.
No? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank Dr. Lass one more time for sharing as many interesting pieces of history. Hopefully, I'm sure you learned something new, because I did. I always do every time I listen to Dr. Lass speak. And I'd also like to thank all of you for attending today. Dr. Lass will be available for signing books if anyone is interested after we conclude here. And just so you know, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock is our next sesquicentennial event. It will be the showing of 2 weeks in May, a student documentary that was completed last year. And it's about the Vietnam protests on the Mankato State College campus in May of 1972. So if this was interesting to you, it gets really exciting tomorrow night as well. It's going to be here in Ostrander, and it'll be followed by a panel of speakers. So thank you very much for attending, and let's thank Dr. Lass one more time.